Before I get started on it, now we got our thing going on next Sunday out there at Camp Gibson. I thought, well, we're going to be having a service in the tabernacle out there. We're all going to be joining together afterwards for food and fun and games. And I thought, you know what? Let's do a sermon on keeping that old time religion. So that's what we're going to be doing next Sunday. That's what we're going to be my topic of the sermon. Is it ready yet? No, it's not even close to being ready yet. That's what we're going to be doing. Just talking about that old time religion. I think that what got me on that was now on Sirius XM radio. I love these new cars. You know, you can travel all the way across the country and listen to one radio station. Of course, that does get kind of old. But they have, on channel 460, they have Billy Graham now. So the last few days I've been listening to Billy Graham, and it's really neat to listen to him because even though we listened to one last time from 1958, which I thought was really great because that's the year I was born, and just how that sermon from back then, even today, really strikes a chord. And we was at that concert last night. Now my wife, I know she knew I was on my phone quite a bit. Had to check the football scores. It got kind of depressing. But one thing she didn't know is one time I wasn't checking the scores. The band that was there, Sidewalk Prophets, they said if you text Nashville to this phone number, that they're going to pick 2 people to be on their next CD singing with them. I thought, well, I sang here at the church and made you all suffer, so why not make the rest of the nation suffer? And so I signed up for it. We'll see what happens. If they go on YouTube or our church and listen to the song, I know, well, even though I get picked, I probably throw my name back in the hopper. But this morning we're on Nehemiah chapter 4, and the topic is defeating discouragement. Now, we're all familiar with Murphy's Law, right? We deal with Murphy's Law every day. Well, the original Murphy was an engineer who conducted an experiment to test human acceleration tolerances. Unfortunately for him, he installed 16 motion sensors the wrong way, leading to the now famous quotation, if anything can go wrong, it will. I guess, you also got the opposite is true, though. If anything can't go wrong, it still will. And here's some flaws that's blamed on this poor Mr. Murphy. Left to themselves, things tend to go from bad to worse. Property will be damaged in direct proportion to its value. If you have children, that is the truth. I remember one time, Pam wanted a new couch for the living room, so we went and bought a new couch. It lasted a week before all the legs were broken off of it. I come home, and all the boys had just gotten out of school, and I walked in the front door, and they found that would be the perfect time to tackle me. And so they all tackled me at one time. We went flying across the living room, landed on the couch, snapped all the legs off of it. So instantly, I sent the boys out to the barn to gather up some bricks. And so those bricks are just the right height to bring that couch back up to where it was before the legs broke off. And that's really good. Until my wife had to have it back then. When she cleaned the house, she rearranged the living room. So 3 weeks later, she realized that something was wrong with the couch. I said, the boys must have done it. Bad thing is, when last son moved out of the house, she realized that all those times I said the boys must have done it, and things were still happening. It might not have been the boys after all. Another thing about Murphy's Law, it says you will never find a lost article until you replace it. That's happened a lot of times with me.
Amen.
And everything seems to be going well. You've obviously overlooked something. Well, here in Nehemiah 4, everything seems to be going wrong all at one time as they're trying to build this wall. In chapter 1, when we looked at it, Nehemiah prayed. In chapter 2, we saw how God moved him from the prosperity of being in the castle with the king in Persia to the desolation of Jerusalem. Last week we got introduced to the workers that Nehemiah was using to rebuild the wall, and discovered that in God's work, no one can do everything, but everybody can do something. And because some worked harder, a man named Barak was listed in the Bible as having the most zeal of anyone. Now the construction project was really moving along good. But when we come to chapter 4 here, things start to change. If you would follow with me as I read chapter 4, it's only got 300 verses. So no, it's only got 23, so it won't take long. But I think it's important that we read this together this morning, because I'm going to be referring to these verses and kind of bouncing around as we talk about it. It so happened that Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, and he was furious and very indignant and mocked the Jews. And he spoke before his brethren in the army of Samaria and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they complete it in a day? Will they revive the stones from the heaps of rubbish, stones that are burned? Now Tobiah, the Ammonite, was beside him, and he said, whatever they built, if even a fox goes up on it, he will break it down, their stone wall. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn their reproach on their own heads, and give them as plunder to the land of captivity. Do not cover their iniquity, and do not let their sin be blotted out from before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders. So we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half of its height, for the people had a mind to work. Now it happened when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were being restored, and the gaps were beginning to be closed, that they became very angry, and all of them conspired together to come and attack Jerusalem and create confusion. Nevertheless, we made our prayer to our God, and because of them we sat a watch against them day and night. Then Judah said, the strength of the laborers is failing, and there is so much rubbish that we are not able to build the wall. And our adversary says they will neither know nor see anything till we come into their midst and kill them and cause the work to cease. So it was when the Jews who dwelt near them came that they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. Therefore I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings, and I set the people according to their families, with their swords and their spears and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. And it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, every one to his work. So it was from that time on that half of my servants worked construction, while the other half held the spears, the shields, the bows, and wore armor. And the leaders were behind all the houses of Judah. Those who built on the wall and those who carried burdens loaded themselves so that with one hand they worked at construction, and with the other they held a weapon. Every one of the builders had his sword girded to at his side as he built. And the one who sounded the trumpet was beside me. Then I said to the nobles, the rulers, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated far from one another on the wall. Whenever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. So we labored in the work, and half the men held spears from daybreak until the stars appeared. At the same time, I also said to the people that each man and his servant stayed at night in Jerusalem, that they may be our guard by night and our working party by day. So neither I, my brethren, my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me took off their clothes, except that everyone took them off for washing. Well, at least they took them off for washing, right? They could be getting kind of bad after a while. But here in chapter 4, we see things start to get a little bit complicated. Mr. Murphy shows up and reminds Nehemiah that everything seems to be going well. You've obviously overlooked something, though. I know I've done a lot of jobs without having everything lined out to finish up and realize I forgot something. Remember the first time I worked on vehicles, me and my stepdad, I was helping to replace the water pump on his car. And we got it all put back together. It took us quite a while because neither one had done anything about it, done anything like it before. We were so proud we got done until we looked on the floor. And there lay the radiator fan. So we had to start taking things apart again to put the fan back in. But there's a story I heard a long time ago about a mother of 8 children. And she came home one Sunday afternoon after visiting her neighbor's house, only to discover the 5 youngest children in the living room sitting in a circle, excited about something. So she stepped in to see what was going on. And she could not believe her eyes. Right in the middle of these kids were several baby skunks. So she screamed at the top of her voice, "Children, run!" And so each child grabbed a skunk and ran to their bedroom. Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it certainly will. Now, you know, there's a plague sweeping our country right now. It's not the flu or the cold or anything else we might think about. This epidemic, however, can be just as deadly as any of the dreaded diseases that we know today. This epidemic is called discouragement. At least 3 things make it such a potent problem. First is universal. None of us are immune to discouragement. Everyone that you have ever known has been discouraged at one time or another. You don't just get it once and it's gone, it's recurring. Where none of us are immune to it. Be discouraged once, does not give us immunity to the disease. You can be discouraged over and over and over again. In fact, you can even be discouraged by the fact that you're discouraged. It's highly contagious. Discouragement spreads even by casual contact. People become discouraged because you're discouraged. Or maybe you become discouraged because you know somebody else that is discouraged. So this morning we're going to focus on both the causes and the cures of discouragement. First, we're going to look at the causes. There's external causes of discouragement. The 2 main types of discouragements are the ones that come from outside of us and those that come from inside of us. So first, we're going to look at the external. They began the work on this wall with great anticipation and with great joy. But then in verse 6 it says, for the people had a mind to work. You know, some translations say they had a heart for the work. Things are going good. People were excited. The wall was going up. And then something happened. Getting the work started on the wall was a major achievement. But keeping the workers working proved to be a much tougher assignment than anybody thought. Someone said one time that exhilaration is that feeling you get just after a great idea hits you and right before you realize there's something wrong with it. You know, I've tackled a lot of projects at home that didn't go quite right. Sometimes I got hurt in the process. My wife always had a loving word for me. What were you thinking? You weren't, were you? Things will go wrong sometimes, even with the greatest plans. But one thing we need to know, wherever God's work is going on, the enemy, our enemy, is also at work. Rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem was certainly no exception to this. When people take God's priorities serious, Satan stirs up agitators to block the work of God. These enemies use 2 types of external forces. The first one is ridicule. We look at the first 2 verses here, chapter 4. The first one says, but so it happened. When Sanballat heard that they were rebuilding the wall, he was furious, very indignant, and he mocked the Jews. This is the 3rd time in the book of Nehemiah that we've seen Sanballat. he was turned into Nehemiah's stiffest opposition. Every time we read about him, he's standing against the work of God, rejecting and ridiculing everything Nehemiah does, everything he's trying to accomplish. Somebody has said, and I've heard it many times, that ridicule is the language of the devil. Those who can stand bravely when shot at will collapse when they're laughed at or ridiculed. The enemy often insults the service of God. Goliath ridiculed David when the shepherd boy met the giant with only a sling. The soldiers mocked Jesus during his trial, and the crowds taunted him while he was hanging on the cross. Sanballat and his friends began to ridicule the workers even before the work started. In chapter 2, verse 19, if you remember, it says, they mocked and ridiculed us. Here in chapter 4, he's making a speech before the army of Samaria, intensifying the power of his ridicule. If you notice, he calls the workers feeble. Next, he ridiculed the job that they were doing by asking them some taunting questions. First, he says, will they fortify themselves? That must have made the Samaritan army laugh. How could a remnant of feeble Jews hope to build a wall strong enough to protect the city and themselves from their mighty army? Next he asks, will they offer sacrifices? Sanballat is saying that it will take more than just prayer and worship to rebuild the city. Then he says, will they complete it in a day? He's suggesting that the workers had no idea the difficult task that lay ahead of them, and would soon stop what they were doing. And he asks, will they revive the stones from the heap of the rubbish? This indicates that the building material that they were working with was so old and damaged that they couldn't possibly use it to make a strong wall again. In verse 3, it was Tobiah's turn to ridicule the workers. He tried to make a joke on them. He says, whatever they build, even if a fox goes up on it, he will break it down, their stone wall. Now, archaeologists have found this wall. And then what they found is this wall was 9 foot thick. The workers became the punchline of every joke. And everyone got a laugh at their own expense. Tobiah hoped his sarcasm would make the builders cast an apprehensive glance at their hard work and cause them to become discouraged with what they were doing. Whenever you attempt to get involved in the work of God, you can always find ridicule. We'll always face ridicule when we do the work of God. Expect it, but we can't let it stop what we're doing. The second cause of external discouragement was repression. Well, we saw that in verses 7 and 8. The enemies had moved from being bothered by the Jews to being very angry with them. They plotted to come together and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. Warren William Wiersbe wrote, God's people sometimes have difficulty working together, but the people of the world have no problem uniting in opposition to the work of the Lord. Sometimes it amazes me how easy Christians give in to the world pressure. The world comes together against us and Christians fall apart. We don't want to be called names. We don't want to be ridiculed. We don't want to go through what Christ went through on that cross, or before he went on that cross. We don't want to go through what the disciples did when they started the church and all the ridicule they put up with. Verse 7 also references the 4 points of the compass. Sanballat and the Samaritans are on the north. Ashdod on the west. Tobiah and the Ammonites are on the east. Gesher and the Arabs are to the south. The workers are surrounded. They're living in fear. They're in fear of being ambushed and attacked by these armies. Next, we have internal causes of discouragement. Pressures from outside often create problems within us. Opposition outside the ranks can lead to depression on the inside. It wasn't the voice of the enemy that was most pervasive to him. It was God's own people. And just like today, it's so easy to internalize the words of the enemy and feel like giving up. In verse 10 again it says, the strength of the laborers is failing. Discouragement started first within the royal tribe of Judah. Now they are David's own blood. They have the blood of David running through their veins. And you would think they would have had more faith and courage than the rest of the people of Israel. They were looked upon as leaders. But the tribe of Judah was discouraged. Then the other tribes would be more inclined to give up on the project. The first cause of internal discouragement is fatigue. In verse 10 it says, then Judah said, it's talking about the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah said, the strength of the laborers is failing. They're tired. They've been working hard. And they needed some rest. We become physically trained too sometimes. And it's very easy to become discouraged at the slightest problem when we're tired. It's also interesting to notice that when the worker became fatigued, they also became discouraged. Verse 6 said that the wall was built to have its height. Many times we as Christians will start a new project and the first half goes very quickly because we're excited to accomplish a goal. But when the newness wears off and the work becomes routine and boring, then it's easy to become fatigued. And when you're tired, it's easy to become discouraged. And begin to think that we'll never finish the job. You know, I've read a lot of projects in the sawmills in my time. And that's the way it worked. When you first started the project, things went quickly because you're doing stuff that people can see. Things are being erected, things are being done. But then you get to the mundane things later on. Hooking up of wires, running hydraulic lines. So that takes a while. And I've seen workers become discouraged because at first everything went really fast. But now things have slowed down and they've become discouraged. The second thing that can happen is you get frustrated. Verse 10 says that they were dealing with so much rubble that they could not rebuild the wall. They became discouraged because they were so aggravated with the situation. I'm sure they were discouraged because they were encountering old broken rocks, dirt, dried up mortar, and other debris that was there where they were trying to build the wall. They had junk that was everywhere, and it was frustrating for them. Just as they lost sight of their goal. We also tend to lose sight of our goal sometimes as Christians. We have to, because we allow too much garbage in our lives. Hebrews 12:1, I think, explains it the best. Hebrews 12:1 challenges us to get rid of anything that causes us to be frustrated in our pursuit of godliness. It says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin so easily entangles. Let us run with endurance the race marked out for us. Now, I don't know what kind of rubble people have in their own lives here. It might be a possession that you're hanging on to, or even an unhealthy relationship. There's sin in all of our lives that we need to let go, that we've had too long. Hebrews says to throw it off so that we don't get tripped up. It's not easy to throw it off, though, is it? You can only do it with God's help. Another cause of discouragement is fear. The enemies of the Lord had struck fear into the hearts of God's people, and they felt like giving up. In verse 10, they were told, they say we are not able to build the wall. They're starting to give up. But did you notice in verse 12, who gets afraid the quickest? So it was when the Jews were dwelt near them came, they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. Those most affected by fear are those that live near pessimistic people. If you want to limit depressing thoughts that bring fear into your life, then it's best not to hang out with negative people. So, I can't remember the name of the speaker's name that said this, but he said one time, A person is the average of their 10 closest friends. So we need to look in our lives and see who's our 10 closest friends, because that's what our average is our 10 closest friends. But the old saying goes, if you're going to soar with eagles, you can't walk around with turkeys. So get rid of the turkeys in your life and hang out with the eagles. Fear puts us in a frame of mind where we can not only become discouraged, but we also become deceived by Satan. They say 60% of our fears are unfounded. 20% are already behind us. 10% is so petty that they don't make a difference. 5% are real, but we can't do anything about it. And only 5% of our fears are real, and we can do something about them. The cures for discouragement. Now that we know the causes of discouragement, ridicule can lead to fatigue, frustration, and fear. But there is a cure for this disease of discouragement. The first cure is to request God's help. But why do we always make that the last one? That should be our first step. It's kind of like the man that went to Africa hunting. He was hunting a lion one day, and he shot the lion and missed it, so his lion turned around and charged him. And he's running from this lion just as hard as he can, and he's praying to God, and he finally falls on his knees because he's exhausted. He says, God, please make this lion a Christian lion. And this lion comes to a stop, and this lion's on his knees, and he hears this lion praying, so he crawled a bit closer to the lion, and he heard the lion say, oh, bless, oh Lord, this food I am about to receive. We need to go to God first. Nehemiah requested God's help in chapter 1 for Jerusalem. In chapter 2, he prayed a quick prayer while he's in the presence of the king when he asked him if he could go. Now in chapter 4, he prays 2 more times. He looked up before launching out. He prayed before he got started. And we see his prayer here in verses 4 and 5 in chapter 4. It says, Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn your reproach on their head. Give them as plunder to the land of captivity. Do not cover their iniquity. Do not let their sin be blotted out from before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders. This was not a quiet prayer. It was not a quick prayer like he did before the king. He was praying for his enemies. He was not praying for his enemies to become believers. But instead, he was praying for God to judge them. This prayer was not nice, but it was understandable, and he was honest. He knew that the enemies were really fighting against God. And so he asked God to deal with them. He didn't give lectures to the workers. He didn't bring in an outside speaker to try to cheer the troops up. He didn't organize raids against the enemy or create a propaganda campaign to put a different spin on things. Here's what Nehemiah did. When the people come against you, talk to God. That's what Nehemiah did. He talked to God. Verse 9 tells us that they prayed to God and then they posted guards. When their enemies started talking, Nehemiah continued to pray and the people continued to work. The second cure is to reorganize your priorities. In verse 13, Nehemiah says, Therefore I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings. And I set people according to their families with their swords, their spears, and their bows. Nehemiah had already organized the people in chapter 3, and they had finished half of the wall. Now, however, the new situation had come that required him to reorganize everything. If the enemy was going to attack, they would most likely attack at the weakest point. So Nehemiah put guards. He armed them with spears and swords and armor. This served two purposes. Two purposes. First, it discouraged the enemy, but always also encouraged the people because it dealt with their fear. When we're discouraged, one thing we need to do is reorganize our priorities. We need to take a look at our life and see what's going on. We need to adopt a change in approach instead of becoming discouraged that we quit. Now, some example I thought of is, do you have a problem with your marriage? If you do, don't bail out on your spouse. Change your approach. Adopt a new attitude. Get some help. Do you have a problem on your job? Well, don't give up. Change your priorities. Do you have a problem with your walk with God? Don't stop following Jesus. Reorganize your schedule so that you can meet Him more on a regular basis. Spend more time with Him. Don't be overcome with discouragement. Do something about it. Verse 16, the workers reorganized again by dividing responsibilities. Half worked, while the other half kept watch. And here's what's neat. Those that worked pushed a wheelbarrow with one hand and had a sword in the other hand. And they worked together. If we can defeat discouragement, the third thing we can do is to remember who God is. After looking everything over and sensing discouragement, understanding Nehemiah rallied his troops in verse 14, he says, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord. He's great and He's awesome. Nehemiah knew, even in the face of opposition, that the success of the wall wholly depended not upon them, but upon God. Verse 10 was true. The people could not rebuild the wall on their own. They needed to remember God. They needed to count on God. But after all, it was God that made the promise that the wall would be rebuilt. It's easy for us to forget God in our tough times. We need to be reminded that He's always there for us. And how do we remember the Lord? By remembering that He is there for us. He loves us. He'll help us through the situations. He'll help us with our discouragement. We've got to remember that God is a great and awesome God. And He's more than able to deal with our discouragement. So we need to remember when we're down, we need to turn our attention from our discouragement and turn to God. The one who is able to do something about it, because we can't. Now the people complained about the rubble that they were having to deal with while they built the wall. We're told that in verse 10. But wasn't the rubble there when they first started to build the wall? And they completed half the wall with the rubble there. So why is all of a sudden is the rubble a problem? Of course it was there at the beginning. But the thing is, they started the project focused on God and His character. Now, and I love this word that I found when I was preparing this, now they've become rubble gazers. They focused more on the junk of their life and in the lives of others. If we do that, just like them, we become discouraged. We need to be God gazers instead of rubble gazers. There's a story about the Golden Gate Bridge. It was completed in 1937. I've never seen it. I've only seen pictures of it, but I've never been to it. But during the first phase of the project, 23 men fell to their death working on the Golden Gate Bridge. Murphy's Law was in full evidence at that time, with that many men dying. Things were going from bad to worse because there were very few safety devices back then. And so when it was halfway completed, they decided to take another look and make some changes. They reorganized and they built the largest net ever made and attached it to the areas where the men were working. Was it worth the cost and the time and effort that they put into that net? Well, you can ask the 10 men that fell and landed in that net and didn't die. They were not injured. Not only did it save those 10 lives, but I also read that the work was completed in 3/4 the time that it was scheduled for because the workers no longer feared for their lives because they had a safety net. We need to remember God is our safety net. God is there for us. No matter what's going on in our life, no matter what we've done, no matter how discouraged we become, God is there for us. He's our safety net. And because He is our safety net, we can live and work freely without fear, knowing that we are protected, that we're safe and secure because of our safety net, which is God. Discouragement can be defeated only through God. God has given us a safety net. As Christians, that safety net is the blood of Christ. Without that safety net, we'd be doomed to hell. But because of the blood of Christ, that safety net is eternal life. Amen. Jesus willingly died on that cross for our sins. He willingly took everything that we've done, and He took it to the cross for us. Not only everything that we've done, but everything we're doing, everything we will do, that's a sin. God put it on the shoulders of Jesus on that cross 2,000 years ago. When Jesus on that cross, He could see each one of us. He knew each one of us. He knew our sins. He knew how we were going to treat Him. He knew we were going to fail Him. He knew we were going to allow the world to discourage us. But He still allowed Himself to be hung on that cross so that we could have eternal life. That's how much He loved us. Please stand with us once we have our invitation.